We might have a hurricane coming, but it is probably the good alarm bells to have and prepare. So I've got Susan here with me and Tyler. We're going to talk about how do we prepare, whether it's your backyard hive of just one or maybe something larger scale, but it can be scary. So Susan Crook, you're with the South Carolina Beekeepers Association Master Beekeeper Program. And then I've got myself, I'm Lauren Donaldson. I'm a board member of the association, but also with Just Me and the Bees. And then Tyler, new beekeeper, right?
That's right. Yep.
Okay, do you even have a hive yet?
Not yet. We're working on it. Very soon.
Okay, so new. And this is good. You're learning before you have them. I think that's great. Susan, how many years do you have behind your belt as a
I'm
beekeeper?
right at a decade.
Okay, I'm approaching that too. So, Tyler, we're here to kind of give you some tips and tricks from our experience here in the Low Country. We've got Hurricane Aaron out there. Knock on all the wood behind me that it's actually not going to hit us, but I think it's a good like jolt to get us talking about how to prepare for things. So, Susan, have you had any mistakes that you think, wow, this is a learning I want to make sure others know about? Because I know I've had some.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, what? Tell me, please share.
Beekeeping is a series of mistakes. And I like to tell newer beekeepers that what we perceive as failure is really just feedback. And that is the best way to learn
Yeah.
beekeeping is you're going to make mistakes, things are going to happen, you can do everything right, and sometimes the bees are just going to be bees. And clearly we can't control the weather, so the best thing we can do is to prepare. And
100%.
yeah, and I've definitely had some oopsies and including storms last year. So
Yeah. Was it? It wasn't even a hurricane last year. It was just water last year that impacted you, right?
that's correct. So when you think about hurricanes, especially here in Charleston, this is something that we have to deal with almost on an annual basis.
Yeah.
Um, you've got wind and you have water. And so there are several things that can occur in both of those. And with wind, of course, you can have your hive knocked over.
Mhm.
You can have limbs, trees, structures damage, fall because of the wind onto your hive and knock them over. Lauren, I know a couple of years ago you had a big limb fall. I remember that.
Yes.
And then water flooding, of course. I had a flood issue last year, which caught me by surprise. But not only flooding, but things that you don't think about, like your stands, if they are on just the earth, the ground,
Right. Those are,
sometimes that
yeah.
earth can get waterlogged and exactly, and the legs of the stands can start to sink, it can become off balance. Then you throw in a little bit of wind and your hives topple over. So
Mhm.
um, it's important to prepare for all of that. And the way that I do that is I ratchet strap all of my hives
Yep. That's
individually.
that.
There you
Yep.
go. Absolutely. Every beekeeper needs to have ratchet straps, I do believe.
Yep.
And also, I anchor all of my stands to the ground.
Yep.
I do that with ground anchors. They're usually, I believe the ones that I'm using currently are about 12 inches.
Okay.
And then I run,
That are like in the ground,
yes,
like you hammer them into the
they
ground.
are screwed down into the ground or hammered into the ground, depending on
Okay.
which kind of anchor that I use.
Yeah.
And then I have a strap. Actually, I also run cable locks that keep the stand secured to the ground. And it stabilizes it a little bit more. And then I also then ratchet strap each individual hive and secure that to the stand. Last year, I had actually it was a nuke, a split, and a limb fell down, knocked it over. But thank goodness I had it actually strapped together. So even though it
Hey.
was on its side, the boxes had shifted just a little bit. The bees were okay.
Okay.
That out yard, I also had flooding. The water came almost to my bottom board. I was not expecting that. And that made me
Oh.
realize I had no upper entrance for my
Mhm.
beehives out there. And so if the water, had risen just a little bit more, I would have been in serious trouble. I'm running screen bottoms, and the bees would not have any way to go in and out, and effectively they would have been sealed up. So that was a scary lesson that I learned is to always do what you taught me to do about the
Okay.
gems that we've used for years, that they can be used for the upper entrances for a hurricane prep.
Yeah. Tyler, have you ever been through the flooding down here in the low country? Yeah.
I
So,
have, and it's not just like the big hurricanes. It could be just a heavy rainfall. It could be really, depending on where you live. It
Yes.
doesn't have to be a big storm. It could be spur of the moment.
oh, so true. So, Susan, you were talking about the racket straps.
Yes.
I keep it on all the time, year round,
Same.
because a regular thunderstorm can bring a limb down and crack your lid. So I recommend this all the time. And then you're right, the upper entrance situation. game changer in terms of like when you leave your bees and then you're going to take care of your family to make sure everybody else is okay. What put peace of mind is knowing if you put that upper entrance. And so even if you don't have something like this, so I've got a nuke that also has it, but I've got it plugged up right now. But if I had a storm coming, I'd take it out. There's the upper entrance. So if it floods down here, they can still, while the water's settling, get out if they need to. But the other entrance, some people have this. See if I can show you. It's one of the inner covers that has the entrance up top. You can make sure that's exposed. Or I've literally been, when it's raining, and drilling a hole up top. So like you can go bare basic if you need to. If you don't have these, I've used cinder blocks to either stack my hives, get them off the ground, or I'll put cinder blocks on top to weight the hives down as well, because you just never know.
You always be prepared. It's like the Boy Scout
Right.
motto, be
I
prepared,
know.
always be prepared. You know, in all things in life, it's just things can be unpredictable.
Yeah.
And when we work with new beekeepers or even experienced beekeepers, when you're considering establishing a new bee yard, one of the things and considerations is, does it flood? And Tyler, I think that's one of the things that Lindsay and I asked you guys when we were out there the other week about the apiary site is you really want to be mindful of where you place your beehives to begin with. The bee yard up in Ridgeville, I did not realize could flood. So I got caught, unprepared for that. Thank goodness it didn't, become a really messy, sad situation. However, I definitely learned from that. So anything that you can do, it really does, it helps. And we prepare ourselves, we prepare our homes. And as a beekeeper, it really is important to go ahead and start thinking about this. So Lauren, excellent job.
Well, I just think like even though this hive stand looks all fancy and pretty, it's really okay. Like I've had cinder blocks to just stack them up. I've even taken the straps through the cinder blocks around the hive. So don't feel like you have to be fancy to help, save them or prepare them. Because there's nothing more heartbreaking, which has happened to me, of just in a windstorm, a regular thunderstorm, my hive fell over. And the one hive that survived was because it was strapped the best. So yeah, we all learn and want to share, especially Tyler being a new beekeeper. Even if it's one hive or many hives, you just want to know how you can best prepare for them. Tyler, do you have any initial questions or concerns? I know it's probably like so much as a new beekeeper.
Yeah, it is a bunch. You did say that you keep ratchet straps on pretty much all the time, and that you like to keep them just in case anything happens. Is there a disadvantage to using, things that raise your hive up, like cinder blocks or even on top all the time? Is there a disadvantage to that? You said other openings. I know it could leave them open to, any other activity that'd be a disadvantage to the hive, but is there a better way to prepare?
So I think cinder blocks don't look as nice.
Yeah.
So it's more like cosmetic. This is the pretty thing to have in my backyard, but like my forest bees, definitely it is just anything to, keep them safe. Entrances, I always worry about entrances. I keep them as small as possible all the time, even in like very, very hot weather to help them manage the space, whether hive beetles or ants or whatever. So I only open like the upper entrance when I know there's a storm approaching. And the ratchet straps, I do them all the time because, some of the bees are out in places where there could be raccoons or, some kind of pest out there that's going to interact with them, could flip over the lid or something. So I like the ratchet straps for the storms, for the whatever raccoon that might be out there. And it's definitely easier to manage versus lifting cinder blocks every time I have to go into a hive. So as a new beekeeper, you'll learn what like works best for you. What you like. As long as you're like learning, being proactive, take tips. You're going to hear Susan's got a different way than me. You're going to hear Bob down the street. He's got a totally different way. Totally recommend you absorbing from everybody because, you'll learn. You're here 10 years in, both of us practically, and we're still learning. So,
Oh, that is so true. You
yeah.
never stop learning. You never stop learning. Tyler, going back to your question, I don't think there's a downside for keeping your hive secured. I agree with everything
Oh,
that Lauren
yeah.
just said. However, I do have a couple of beekeeper friends that kind of fuss about one of my bee yards because it's time consuming. It's not really once you get used to working your ratchet straps, but it does require a little extra step, to open the hive. You have to undo your stuff. And then before you leave, you put it back together. One thing that you need to be mindful of, or for me, is where I have strapped down my hive stands and the stakes in the ground, it creates, I guess, a potential tripping hazard if you're not aware that it's there.
Yes. Oh, good point.
Yeah,
Spray
so
it.
I have
Pink,
to,
orange, spray,
yeah,
spray it.
flag
Spray
it.
your numbers.
That's actually a
Oh,
good idea because it really does blend into that bee yard. And I have
yes.
to remember to remind people because if you're working a hive from the side, that's where the straps are. So you have to be careful. It could pose a tripping hazard, but I just would rather be safe than sorry. I would rather have it and not need it
Yeah.
than need it and not have it. So that's just, how I am about
Yeah.
a lot of things.
Totally agree. Great question, Tyler. Do you have any others? Can we help you? Or Susan, do you have any other questions?
No, but I want to emphasize how fun and important it can be to get involved with your local bee groups.
Yeah.
And Lauren, I don't know if you remember years ago, this was pre-COVID, we had a storm coming and there was a trailer. Like, worst case scenario, if you need to move hives, you can actually move your hives out of harm's way.
Yes.
And, if you have a good bee community behind you, somebody's going to have a trailer. Beekeepers love to help other beekeepers, and
Yeah.
you can go get those things loaded up, get those moved out of harm's way. So there are a multitude of benefits for being involved in your bee community and having bee friends. And that's just one of them. They can come in handy for hurricane prep. So, and another funny thing though that I like to tell new beekeepers is you will never think about weather the same again. Everything with beekeeping revolves around weather, whether it's temperatures, whether it's precipitation, whatever. It really drives most of what we do as beekeepers. So we become like armchair meteorologists.
Yeah. So true. Have any other questions?
I had a quick question. How
Yeah.
do you see bee behavior change during a storm? I was going to ask, is it something that
So
they prepare for maybe? Because I know that a lot of animals have, natural instincts when it comes to either high winds or, pressure systems. Do you see them changing their behavior based on a storm that's coming in, and how do you prepare for that?
1,000%. Yes. Susan, same thing. You see
Oh,
it.
without
Yeah.
question. Yes.
Because
Yes.
even so today I was prepping hives, checking if they had enough food. Because you have to think of that too, of like,
That's what I was about to say. We did
oh,
talk about
okay,
that.
yeah,
Yes.
the food, especially in August, September, we go through the dearth. So checking for food, but they were a little more feisty. I never like to say honeybees are aggressive. They're not. They're protective. They're defensive. I'm in their house messing with things. So, and especially if it's cloudy, overcast, they're feisty and definitely more defensive. So I saw a different level of energy today than I had in the past. But Susan, you wanted to add about food?
Well, no, you're absolutely correct. I agree 100% with what you just said. And food is very important to either provide or make sure they are properly provisioned. Even if a storm comes through and it's in and out, let's say a thunderstorm in 30 minutes, or a hurricane that lasts for 24 hours or whatever it may be, a lot of times these storms blow away any forage that is out there. We saw that with Helene up in Western North Carolina and in South Carolina, where when it came through, it basically destroyed all of the forage that the bees would have had the storm not come through. So feeding is definitely something that you want to prepare for and then monitor after a storm comes through.
Such a great reminder. And a lot of people are like, well, what do they need then? So, Susan, what are you looking for in your hives when you're looking for, do they have enough food? And if they
Well, when I
don't have
look for
food,
their food stores, I want to make sure that they have nectar or honey stored on their brood frames and then extra reserves of frames of honey. Usually you will see that in their hive on the outer frames, whether it's the brood box or, you might have a super of honey
yeah,
capped or whatever on top. But also pollen, I just want to make sure, just on a basic standard inspection, I want to make sure that the bees are provisioned with bee bread, pollen within their colony that they can use. So I'm always checking that. Sometimes you'll see that they're just light, either on nectar or honey, and you can add syrup for
yeah.
them to use. It's really difficult for us to add pollen here in South Carolina because of hive beetles.
Oh, yeah.
There are ways that you can do it, but it requires a lot of energy expenditure on our part because you can only add a little bit at a time and you have to check it within, 48 hours or so, remove it if they're not using it, because you don't want the hive beetles to lay their eggs in your pollen patties or pollen sub. You can do external pollen powder substitute, dry pollen. You can set up a feeding station on the edge of your apiary for them to use. That's one way to get around the pollen deficiencies without using a patty. But yeah, just anytime you go into your beehive, that's one of the things that you need to be looking for. Do your bees have food? If they don't have food, then you're not going to have strong, resilient bees, and you have this cascade of other events with other stressors that can really take hold, like pest disease, et cetera.
Yeah, so today when I went through one location, I could tell they were already very short on nectar. So
Yeah.
I had to feed them. I had to substitute, sugar water for them, just to be safe for now.
Yeah,
But
we had to do that a couple of hives earlier this week at Boone Hall. Some of our splits that we had made, they were already light. I mean, the box felt light. The
yeah,
frames felt light, so we definitely put syrup.
recap. So get them off the ground,
Mhm.
strap them down or get a cinder block. We got the upper entrance and then feeding, right?
Yeah.
So key things to think of. Are we forgetting anything from our experience to do?
Location. Do you keep them in the same location? If you're near a tree line, will you move them, to a better location? How far would you move them?
Yeah, that's great. So it's always a lot of work to move bees. So I've only done it once, and Susan talked about like the friend with a big, trailer where we moved hives when we knew a hurricane it was coming. It like Charleston was the spot. That's when we moved it because you don't know if it's going to be flooding or trees coming down, or just the wind. Um, but again, it's why I keep the straps on them, throughout the seasons in case of a tree limb, because it could just be a windy afternoon and a tree limb comes down. But I actually do have some out in wide open space, and those are ones that have just fallen over. And then I've had some in a forest, and knock on wood, they've been fine. And then one that you didn't think they were in a dangerous spot, but a tree limb took a, so you never know. But yeah, being observant of where your hives are so that you can prepare, the best possible way.
Yeah.
It's a great question.
Tyler, Juan and I were talking at Boone Hall this week, coming up with our hurricane plan. We're running almost 50 hives out there. Even though we don't have documented flooding history, they have canals and drainage and all of that. However, if we're expecting like a Cat 3 coming through, I talked to him about maybe because the land itself is close to the coast. And
Mhm.
Tyler, you guys are right there on a marsh.
We are, yes.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
if we have something big that with an expected surge, and it doesn't even have to be a Cat 3 to get a big surge, but we'll definitely talk about that. And if we need to come and move your hives,
Mhm.
we can certainly do that.
Okay.
Hopefully we won't have to do that, but
Right.
you just never know, guys.
It helps to have a plan and be ready if you need to, and
Yes,
know people that can help. Have a trailer,
absolutely.
like you said. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Nature's going to do what nature does. So if something happens and you've done all you can, it is heartbreaking, but it doesn't make you a horrible beekeeper.
That's
Like
right. Things are going to
we're all
happen as a
trying.
beekeeper,
Yeah.
period. End of story.
Yeah.
And it's okay. And you just try to mitigate any risk. You do the best you can. And
Absolutely.
bees are going to be bees sometimes.
Yeah.
Weather's going to be weather. Nature's going to be nature.
Thank you both so much. This was helpful. Susan, with your experience and knowledge, I really appreciate it. And Tyler, you had some really great questions. Thank you very much.
Of course, yeah, happy to be here and have my questions answered. Absolutely. It really helps to get this, the time with people who really know the field. So
Yeah, thank you both so much.
Anytime, Lauren. I can talk forever about